Well, hello, I'm Louise Savage. Welcome back to my channel if you've joined me before, and if not, welcome to Louise Savage Muses. Well, it's Valentine's Day tomorrow, so I thought I'd find some books that are about love and relationships. Not necessarily, I have to say, romance or, I don't think there are many books in this list that have necessarily got very happy endings, but love in the sense of people who find true love, really deep, passionate love that lasts a lifetime. I think, for me personally, I was widowed in my 20s, and one of the things that sustained me was the fact that we had loved each other so deeply, and true love happens at all sorts of different stages of people's lives. Some people never experience it, others might experience it multiple times. So anyway, this book really is dedicated to love and lovers everywhere. And this book, this podcast, no! This YouTube video, oh my goodness Louise, this is not going well, is it? Anyway, first up is a novel by William Wharton called Last Lovers. I read this in 1992, very, very long time ago, and it has stayed with me ever since. William Wharton's an American writer, in case you haven't encountered him before, and he wrote a novel called Birdie, which was made into a fantastic film. I think that's how I first came across him. And he also wrote a book called Dad, which I haven't yet read, but is supposed to be a stunner. Anyway, Last Lovers is a very, very unusual love story. And it's set in Paris, which of course is one of the cities of romance. And it features a man called Jack, or Jacques, as Mirabelle calls him, a man called Jack, who's a sort of British businessman. He's had a family and a wife, and his life just has never felt right. He's in his 40s, and he decides to give everything up and go to Paris and pursue his dream of being a painter. And while in Paris, he's got his easel out, and he's got it clumsily straddling the pavement, and a woman crashes into his easel, quite literally, because she's blind. She's also in her early 70s. But this fantastic, beautiful love affair emerges between these two characters who are 2 decades apart in age. And it's one of the most sensual novels I think I've ever read. It's subtle, it's thoughtful, and it sort of, one of the things I really love about it is that it shows that it shouldn't really matter what anyone else thinks. Relationships are about that like-mindedness, that shared interest, and whether you fit together physically too. So I just found this book an absolute delight when I read it. And I must reread it at some point. I haven't got around to doing it yet. But anyway, that's my first sort of choice. Last Lovers by William Wharton. Really recommend it. Next up is Fortune's Rock by Anita Shreve. If I'm feeling a bit sort of fed up, or I don't know what to read next, I will very often turn to Anita Shreve. Again, I mentioned earlier that I was widowed in my 20s, and Anita wrote a novel called The Pilot's Wife, which is about a wife who is grieving and for her husband. And I found that captured really, really well, the experience of grief, or marital grief specifically. But anyway, Fortune's Rock, again, it's not a conventional love story in many ways. It's set at the tail end of the Victorian era, if I remember rightly. And Olympia, what a great name for a heroine, has gone with her family who live in Boston. to the seaside for some respite, and she meets a friend of her father's turns up at the place that they're staying, and he's written this sort of these political essays really about the plight of the lives of the labourers in the mills. And so it's also a novel about class, it's a novel about struggle, it's a novel about lots and lots of really interesting things. But anyway, Olympia sort of discovers her own sexuality and has a 6-week affair with this doctor. The consequences aren't good. It's got one of the best opening lines. I just see if I can read it to you. I'm going to have to put my glasses on to do that. Bear with. In the time it takes for her to walk from the bathhouse at the seawall of Fortune's Rocks, where she's left her boots and has discreetly pulled off her stockings, to the waterline along which the sea continually licks the pink and silver sand, she learns about desire. So, you know, in terms of a novel that captures passion and love and, you know, discovering sex for the first time, it's beautiful, a really good read, but you need a hanky or 5 to get through it. There you go, Anita, Shreve, Fortune's Rock. Next up, very, very famous novel, won the Booker Prize. It's The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. And again, I read this a long time ago. It stayed with me. It's another novel where the film, I think, does do it justice. Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson star in the film version. But the novel, I just love Ishiguro's prose. It's so crisp and beautiful, not a wasted word in this book. And it tells the story of a butler. He's getting on in life. His employer persuades him that he needs a break, and he goes on a 6 weeks, or am I just thinking about the other book? Anyway, no, I don't think it's that long. But he goes on a motoring tour of the West Country in England, and it's him sort of thinking back and reminiscing over his experiences. And it's a book that's absolutely charged with regret. He's thinking about all the, the ways in which his life perhaps has not been very well lived. Now, it's a love story because he meets up again with the housekeeper, the head housekeeper. I can't remember her name, Miss Kenton, I think she's called. It's very, very clear that they were deeply in love with each other when they worked together in the same stately home. And it's about his regrets about that relationship, and yet it's the way that the electricity between the two of them, and you know, the missed cues and the longing, which is really, really wonderful to read. He's a very, I keep saying really, 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 sorry about that. He's a very, very sad character in that he's got so many things that he got wrong in life. I mean, he worked for years and years and years for a man who was a Nazi sympathiser. He missed he didn't go to visit his father as he was dying because he felt his duty was to stay with his master. So you've got this really, it's a comment, isn't it, on that particular class of people as well. In the you know, when they were working for and still do, I should imagine, in some country piles around the place. So there we are. That's another super recommendation, I hope. Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. And then we come on to A Single Thread by Tracey, Chevalier. All of these books, I think, are set in the past, aren't they? They're all historical, which is quite interesting. So this one's set in the 1930s, and it looks at the plight of those poor women who lost their fiancés in the war. The young woman, I think she's called Violet in this, has lost her father and her brother and her fiancé, and she's kind of doomed to look after her very, very difficult, rather unpleasant mother. You know, nothing's ever right for this mother. And she, this is a single thread, I can't say it, a single thread by Tracey Chevalier, I should have said. So anyway, so Violet scrimps and saves, and every little penny is tucked away, and she manages to escape her mother's and set up in a lodging herself in Winchester. Now, Winchester has the most stunning cathedral, and she becomes part of this group of broderers whose job it is to embroider the kneelers for the cathedral. So when people pray, they can kneel on them rather than on the cold stone floor. And she meets lots of people. It's a very eclectic bunch of women. But also, while she's in Winchester, she falls in love with a man who is married. His name's Arthur, and it's how that relationship again. It's a really, really interesting love affair that proceeds, and some superb descriptions of cycling through the countryside back and forth to the mothers and all this kind of thing. It's a wonderful novel. I really, really raved about this when I read it a few years ago. It's a novel about the small details of life, which the thread kind of suggests, the motif of embroidery and so on. But anyway, there you are. I commend this to you. Single Thread by Tracey Chevalier. And finally, last but certainly not least, this beautiful book. It looks like a huge tome, but actually it's very big font. It's not a monster. But anyway, it's called To the Bright Edge of the World by Eowyn Ivey. Now, she is a woman from Alaska. I was lucky enough to meet her a few years ago when Simon of Savage Reads interviewed her, and I went along to heckle. Anyway, this is another fabulous, fabulous story about love. So it's set in Alaska. Again, it's the 1800s, and it's Lieutenant Colonel Forrester, great name. I think his name's Alan. He has been charged with travelling up the Wolverine River, which has never been done before by Europeans, and to map it so that they can sort of start to really, for want of a better word, exploit Alaska. And the novel sort of focuses on the relationship between him and his young wife. He's married a much younger woman. He's married quite late in life, and she is expecting a child. Her name's Sophie, and she's left behind in Vancouver while he goes off on this adventure with a very small group of men. And the communication, the letters, and his diary and various historical documents are used to tell the story. And again, this novel just thrums with the love between the husband and wife. It's a tragic tale. You need a load of hankies. It's so beautiful in that I don't know whether I will ever go to Alaska, but I feel as though I've been, because the way that the snow and the cold and the setting, and also it's a novel about the indigenous peoples as well, of that part of the world, and the tension, these Europeans going into that space that the indigenous people know how to navigate and know how to operate. And there's lots in it about kind of the supernatural, spiritual side of life as well. So Eowyn Ivey is a wonderful novelist, And I don't think she's written anything recently. I don't know when her next novel might be due out. I'm not sure. I hope I haven't missed it. It's highly likely. She also wrote The Snow Child, which is one of my favourite books as well. But anyway, this is her second novel, and I adored it. Anyway, wherever you are in the world, whether you're single, whether you've got a partner, I do hope you've got some love in your life, and hopefully you can relive those feelings of passion and love through these fantastic novels. Take care. Speak to you soon. Bye.